Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and I'm really excited about today because it doesn't get any more Ponchatoula than the Bennett family. These guys have been around here probably 100 years or more, and they're pretty much involved in everything anywhere you go. If you're looking for a good time on a Friday night, you can watch the best Elvis impersonator in the world, a member of their family. If you need a ride to school, they got you covered with bus drivers. If you need your car or truck to be towed because you got in a wreck, they're the first ones there. They're just everywhere, and they're helping people, whether it's through the volunteer fire department or volunteer in some other capacity. But it's a really friendly family, and Darren Bennett is perhaps as well known as any of them. So, Darren, with no further ado, welcome to the show. Why don't we kick things off with you just telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Well, about myself, that's a little bit better these days than it used to be, maybe, because I've grown like a lot of us.
Amen. Me too.
I use the phrase a lot that I'm from here. I didn't come here, and some of the folks
that sounds like a Paul's Cafe, writer downer there.
But probably so. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how long we've been here. So the old three spot across from Paul's Cafe, the old train. B.B. Bennett, my grandpa, came here, started working with the mill in 1941, and
wow.
So that's how long Daddy's been in the area.
Yeah,
he was 3 years old.
Wow.
And then they moved out here on Sisters Road, where we are now, in 1953. So that's how long we've been here on Sisters Road. So when Papa first moved here, he was they rented a house up like a little past where North Oaks is now.
Right.
And his first job with the mill was getting that steam built up in the old train to blow the whistle at 5 to wake everybody up that lived at the mill.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a car. So he walked from up by North Oaks down to the mill he must have had to leave home 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning anyway,
I bet.
It's
funny, you mentioned the whistle for the mill at 5 a.m. It reminds me of the noontime fire department horn that I grew up with. And right. You mentioned all these things, or we mentioned them, and it's like folks that just moved here wouldn't know about any of that, right? But growing up around here, and you would know because you come from a family of firefighters. But it used to be there was a horn every day at noon, and long before that, like you mentioned, there was a whistle that let this town know it's time to go to work. And the mill was the main thing. I mean, that's why we have areas like Millville. But it sounds like long before subdivisions hit this area and people started putting up fancy brick signs and, quarter-acre lots, you guys set up a true homestead there on Sisters and hunkered down. And here we are 80 some odd years later, you're still there. What's it mean to you to be from here, not come here? I mean, is that something you take pride in? Do you talk to your daddy and others about that, your mama?
Well, man, it means a whole lot. I don't know anywhere else in the world I would want to live. We have met some really nice people in I'll call it in the Elvis world.
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi has some of the greatest folks, man. Tupelo, Mississippi has been so good to Brandon and our family. I mean, heck, I'm sure a lot of y'all saw Brandon on the Rose Parade float, the Mississippi Rose Parade float. That was people in Tupelo told the governor, "Hey, this is the guy we want,"
That's cool.
And so he's a Memphis ultimate winner, and we got a couple of other guys that do that around here and has done it, but none of them have that.
Nobody is well or better than Brandon. And I'm going to get into asking you about his career and your career as the Colonel Parker of his outfit. But before I get there, go ahead.
Back up just a little bit about our roots here, because
that's what I wanted to go back to. Thank you.
My mama's a Schilling, and she was born in Wadesboro, out
I was
there
about to
in
ask you,
Rosaryville.
Wadesboro, right there at Dutch Lane, right on Wadesboro Road. Is that where her family's from?
Yeah, behind the old cemetery is where my mom was born, where she grew up, and her dad, Clarence Schilling, and Annie, they were strawberry farmers. And so my grandpa Schilling's name is on the board up there at the city hall. I mean, it. So from both sides, I'm from here, and
the
very proud
Schilling
of it.
family is an outstanding one. I went to high school with BJ and Mikey Schilling. One of my classmates had the Samro married into that family, but I got kind of a bird's eye view, not just playing ball with them as we all did, but across the street from your old family property there, your mom's family property, is Mr. Charles Richard's property. And his son Chad was one of my best friends. So I spent tons of nights and weekends out there running the roads by the old cemetery you mentioned out at Rosaryville area. And it was just good, hardworking people going back to strawberry farming days and beyond. They've really prospered. So I didn't know till today that you were half Schilling. I've known your mama my whole life. Think back to her finally in my PHS days when she was running the office up there for Mr. Allen. I'm sure I asked you about that a little later, but that's neat to know. So two families kind of been around here forever. What's it like growing up in that house, on Sisters Road, the son of prominent people from good families? What was your childhood like?
It was, man, it was what I feel like today was a whole lot of discipline, which I think is the reason that I turned out. I was scared of my daddy. I still am a little bit, but it's about.
That's a good thing, man. Those guys came up under Coach Shield and and Coach Johnson. Your dad and my dad came up hard, man. They'll put it on us.
Yeah, I mean, and I got some put on me, and there was some I probably should have got that I didn't. And we all did that. I football. My dad coached me and Byron Willie in Little Conference football in Ponchatoula the first year.
Yeah,
first year in 1971. We the first year that Little Conference football was in Ponchatoula. Mr. Jackie Kipper was the commissioner. My dad was a coach on the Citizens Bank team. Joe Bill Rodriguez was the coach on the Red Devils team. No. Kiwanis Red Devils. I think JC's was Joe Bill Rodriguez. Let me ask you this.
Was Citizens Bank the Wildcats back then? Because that was my first team. Joey Berthelot coached me.
That's right. I think the Wildcats there's still a Wildcats team in the Ponchatoula Little Conference, which is the only name in that.
That's really neat because Citizens Bank is long gone, but their Wildcats live on. That's really cool, man. That's neat to know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember your dad when he was a game warden, man. I grew up down Tickfall River. No electricity. We had a generator. And your dad was a game warden. Of course, that's another.
Yeah, he lived out that way too in Killian for a while.
Yep.
Yeah. I think of you and hunting. I don't hunt anymore. I haven't in years. My family still do it. My dad does. My brothers do. But I remember hunting with you and your daddy and all y'all. Up in Mississippi when I was a kid. So I know that's a big part of your background. So you're growing up in a house with a lot of discipline. A good, stern father. You're hunting. Clearly spend a lot of time on the water. What'd you do for fun? Was sports the main thing? And you mentioned Byron Willie. Who else did you run with? Like, who was your gang back then?
Oh man. Well, the Rodriguez boys, Brian Allen, Robert was his daddy. Keith Boudreaux, he out there, turtle farmer. That's what he did his whole life. We still do get together occasionally because we graduated together, Brian and Keith and myself.
That's cool. Yeah.
Just good people who was raised the same way I was, And
that's that era, I bet. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you or any of them are messing up in any of those necks of the woods, your friend's mom or dad will spank you as quick as yours would and kept everybody straight. and there was kind of this community accountability. Am I on the right track with that? What was that like?
And hopefully they left it at that and was happy that they got to do what they did and didn't call home and tell my daddy, because when I got home I'd get another one. That's
yeah, that was one of the downsides of being a sheriff's kid, is wherever we got in trouble, and Lord knows Bree and I did everywhere. Everybody just loved calling Dad up and telling him about. So you would often get double duty there.
I heard I was there. I'm sure that he forgot I was there, but I don't know how old Louis was. But Louis was probably 10 or 12, and we were all out at the Artiegas on Weinberger or Estabrook, whatever, and playing ball, and you and Louis got into it about something, and he gave you some choice words, and I guess my eyes got big because I'd never heard Louis say very much at all.
It took a lot to fire him up.
I didn't get him or you in trouble over that, just so you know.
Well, thank you for keeping that, because if you had reported back like most people did, the belt would have come out at our house, and it would not have ended well for Louis, probably, or me. So we appreciate you. So, of course, Louis, my youngest brother, and your son Brandon are about the same age.
Year apart.
Came up playing ball together. Y'all coached them, right?
Coached the Wildcats. Brandon was in the 6th grade. Louis was in the 5th.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. The year before that, when Brandon was in the 5th, Josh Wolf was.
Jocko. Yeah, that's great, folks. So my baby boy is best pals with Josh's nephew, Sebastian, Kyle's son. And Coach Al, he's actually behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but right behind that baseball there is a picture of my first all-star team. And Al Wolf and Muddy Burner were our coaches. So, yeah, I know you had a squad there, because I saw those guys coming up. That had to be kind of cool, though. If your dad coaching you when you played the Wildcats, Brandon comes along. I remember Beef is what they all called him. He was a heck of a player. It had to be rewarding to watch your son thriving and have all these other kids. Was that something you enjoyed? It seemed like you did it for a while.
Well, honestly, I didn't. I only coached the 2 years that Brandon played, and then when Brandon we coached the Wildcats again. Brandon was the head coach, and I helped him. Daddy helped a little bit when Jonathan Rucker was 10 years old in the 5th grade.
Yeah.
So
I saw him this weekend up at the Chapapila basketball courts. We were watching games. I was leaving. He was coming. But he's doing really well. I think he's training to be a riverboat pilot now, which is a heck of a career, man. He's about to make some big bucks if he's not already making them.
I tell you what, that's a family deal there. That's hard to get into.
Very tough to get into if you're not born into it. Yeah. But Jonathan's doing well. I want to share with you, Darren, before we dig back into your childhood. We got a few comments coming in here that I want to share. And Larry Macaluso III says that you were one of the best guys you'll ever meet. What do they say, Larry? It takes one to know one. How's that make you feel? That's got to be cool coming from somebody like Larry.
It is. Larry's a good dude. Matter of fact, him and Taylor were pretty close. They sang together in chorus, I think.
Well, and like your son, Larry's famous for his singing. Heck, he's been on national TV.
Yeah,
Larry, thanks for tuning into a small time show like Darren and I have, because we tuned in watching you with millions of others on national TV, man. So we appreciate you here. Billy Thomas, who's watching, one of my old players, he references a team my dad and I coached, the Sheriff's Posse, in 1996. Taking me back there, Billy. That was a heck of a squad, man. We had some players. Billy was a great guy. He was our power forward, a heck of a rebounder, and just a really solid guy. And then we've got Aaron and Ricky Brune here. Now, Aaron works with me. She's an assistant at my law office. And she says that your towing company, which we're going to ask about later, Bennett's Towing, rescued her husband, Ricky, from a cell dead zone long ago. And she was really grateful, and she considers you all heroes to this day. That's Aaron, thank you for sharing that, because I think, tow truck drivers are kind of unsung heroes that don't get mentioned as often as other first responders and whatnot. But it's true. You rescue people, whether it's a roadside flat. I mean, it seems like everybody knows somebody who's been killed changing a tire or on a roadside when they would have liked to not be. And it's so important that y'all get there quickly, operate safely, and get people out of there. And it sounds like from Aaron's comment that that's what happened with Ricky. I'm going to ask you more about that later, Darren. But before we close this chapter on your childhood, what are some lessons you learned? Because I know the kind of man that raised you. He grew up kind of with my dad, and they go way back to, 1950s PHS football. And I'm sure, and I know your mom, because as I mentioned, she was running the head office at PHS when I was in school there. And so I'm sure you picked up some great lessons that you passed down to Taylor and Brandon, and now are, being applied through them to grandkids. But what are some lessons you remember from your childhood that you wouldn't mind sharing with us now?
Well, man, I like to think that I was taught the value of a dollar, and that it wasn't going to be given to you, that you needed to make it, that you needed to bust your butt to make it, and not expect somebody else to give it to you. And just to respect everybody and give everybody that you can is more respect than they're giving you. Just proud to be from here,
Yeah, well said. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk about the next chapters, in your life. So you get out of school. We're going to ask you about Bennett's Towing and all the things you've been doing the last 20 or 30 years. But before you opened up that record company in 1992 and went into business for yourself, what was life like, from the professional, if you want to share that? I definitely want to ask you about how you met your lovely bride and this kind of hometown love story came to be. But tell us about where you went next once you kind of got out of PHS and moved into adulthood.
Well, man, I was so fortunate. There was this guy that used to ride around school in this big black 4-wheel drive truck, and I wanted to do what he did, because he was just always riding around school, and he had only graduated a couple of years before me. And I said, man, I don't know what he does, but that's what I want to do. Well, come to find out, he worked offshore in the Gulf of Mexico for Texaco, 7 on, 7 off. So you didn't notice him not being there every day, but he was there a lot of days. And so I was fortunate enough to, my mom went to school with his uncle, and made a phone call, and his uncle, Terrell Rook, who lived out on Brown Road. His wife was a Wells. Shame on me. I can't remember her name right now, but anyway, I told him I wanted to go work offshore, and he said, I can help you. He said, if that's what you want to do. I said, yes, sir, that's what I want to do. And he said, don't go out there and just stay for a year. Go out there and make you some money and make your career. And so I stayed out there 15 years. I went 7 on, 7 off. I quit in 95, only a year and a half after we started the record business in 93.
Really?
So
did the record business take off that quickly, or was that the plan all along?
Well, it got pretty busy pretty quick. We didn't realize that, Daddy, well, back then, Daddy was about 40 years old.
Right.
A little over 45, something like that. So he would get up at night and run the calls whenever I was offshore. And then when I would come home offshore, then I would do it. So, at the time, the oil field, there was some folks getting laid off, and I just said, well, I'm gonna do this, and so I told my boss out there I was quitting. I got with the personnel lady, and they paid me just like I was working for 6 months. Gave me like a severance, because they were laying some people off and letting some people go, and so I said, you know what, I got a good evaluation. I don't think I'm going to get laid off, but you never knew. Right. So I said, so I took the little package, and then I had a little cushion to work with to get it started here a little bit more, and then I don't know how long I was still working offshore. whenever we bought our first brand new wrecker, and that was in '95.
Okay.
We bought our first brand.
But you had opened before that with some used equipment, am I right? Like because I graduated high school in '95, and it seems to me like y'all opened when I was in school.
Well, yeah, we opened in '93. We had a little red boom truck, a little red wrecker truck that we had, and we bought it. It was used. It was in pretty bad shape. We got a Facto Bake red paint job put on it. And over in Baton Rouge.
Well, whose idea was it to start the company? Where did this all come from?
Well, man, it was a brainstorm between my dad and I. I just knew that I was missing baseball games and football games that Brandon was doing, and
Brandon probably graduated high school around 2000, so he was probably Taylor was little, right? And I'm just trying to figure out the timeline here. So you're right. So your kids are little, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Brandon was born in '82, and Taylor was born in '85.
Gotcha.
So Taylor, they were about 10 years old. That was about the time. Matter of fact, when Brandon was playing little conference ball, no. When I quit, the last vacations I took from offshore, I was going out on a boat. I wasn't flying out, and I had a really good boss. So I would come in on a boat, drive home Friday night, coach the little conference football on Saturday morning, and then leave back Sunday morning going back offshore.
Whoa, yikes. That on a boat too. If you're not on the chopper, that's a heck of a turnaround. So you mentioned the little used red wrecker you had. It didn't look like this thing here that we have. I mean, a big fine piece of equipment like that costs a pretty penny. It sounds like y'all started on a different kind of budget, and you had to kind of crawl before you could walk. Is that
absolutely? Absolutely.
That sounds a lot like my law firm. That handshake, cheap rate deal I had with Andrew Edwards for years when I was coming up. No secretary. I didn't even have caller ID. Y'all did the tow company version of that. So you mentioned your dad's in his 40s. You're a young man.
We paid $7,500 for our first little record.
What? Wow. Now, $7,500 in 1993 was a lot of money, but that's still nothing compared to what a one would cost new or now.
No, that right there, that's $150,000 truck now, and that truck right there is a 2019 model. We were able to afford that whenever Trump was in office the first time.
So now they cost more than my last house did. I bought a house on 8th Street in '02 for less than the cost of that truck. But you're getting started. It's modest. It's just you and your dad. Eventually you guys grow. You have a big business. Was there a plan to kind of grow to where you got to, or did it just happen naturally? What was that like?
No, it grew for us. It grew where we were needing that old truck was breaking down. We were spending $1,000 a month on repairs, and then while it was down, you was losing business. So we just said, well, look, let's get a truck note, and at least it won't be broke. And we can get calls. We won't be losing calls while this one's in the repair shop, Yeah,
because in the record business, reliability is half of the deal, right? I mean, if people don't rely on you being able to come out when called, you probably stop getting calls pretty quick. So that
about the same time, in about 2000, was I guess about the same time when. Mama was Virgil Allen's secretary, and
let's talk about that for a bit.
Red wrecker.
Oh wow, look at that. Let me zoom in on you there, get a better view. Wow, look at that. That's cool. Now, is that Brandon or Taylor there in the back? I can't tell from where I am.
Brandon and Nana.
Oh, that's Dana. That's Dana standing by the truck, and Brandon on the back.
Oh wow. Cool. Very cool.
Oh, Look at Jeff Miller and Larry Pearson. That's
that's
Dana and
cool.
I with them.
That's some PPD legends there, man.
That's right. That's right.
That's really neat. So let's talk about the business, because I think a lot of people, I'm in the car wreck business. My practice all revolves around car and truck wrecks. So we deal with folks like you a lot. But I think a lot of folks don't realize the variety of services that you provide, because clearly somebody gets in a wreck, you go, help clear the roadside along with the police, and you take things. But, you do other things from lockout assistance to storage. So if you don't mind, just give us kind of towing business 101. What all goes into the wrecker and towing business that average Joe may not understand if they haven't had to go through it yet?
Well, there's a whole lot of paperwork here that gets done in the office. People just you can't imagine what it means. It's just, people think we just tow a car in and then they come get it, or the insurance comes and gets it. Well, there's a whole lot of folks that don't have insurance, and you know that.
Yeah, of course. About half the people on the road have either minimum coverage or nothing.
Or not, most of them. Well, I don't know if most of them have nothing, but
a lot have nothing.
A minimum, yeah. And that's something I'd like to ask you and want you to talk about a little bit, about somebody knowing what coverage they have, because it's really important that you have a coverage that you need, and have coverage that covers you, because there's so many people that don't have it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So I wrote this book, Accident Handbook, 10 years ago because my mom got in a wreck. She just got her second shoulder replacement surgery as a result of that wreck within the last week. And it's 300 pages, and it will bore you to death. But the chapter in there that says the most important advice I give is exactly what you just mentioned, Darren, which is what insurance to get, and everybody, we all know insurance rates are sky high, and we're not going to talk politics as to why. But what I'll tell you is, in a world where so many people have no coverage or minimum coverage, you got to be protected in that wreck. And the only way to do it is protect yourself by buying the coverages you need. So MedPay, which is short for medical payments coverage, to pay your own medical bills or deductible. If you get hurt, get it. It's not the most expensive coverage. It's absolutely essential. which stands for uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, is absolutely critical. And look at this! I see the legend himself coming on, so I'll stop harping about that. Mr. Sonny, how you doing? We have us with Sonny Bennett, the Godfather himself. How you been, Mr. Sonny?
I'm getting by.
Well, you look good, and hey, I want to ask you this.
Yeah, there's three stages in your life. You got youth, you got middle age, and then they got, you sure are looking good.
Well, my daddy's in the same stage as you. I was at his house for coffee this morning, and y'all are holding up pretty well, considering Coach Johnson was bopping y'all in the head with a 2x4, 60 years ago or whatever. Tell me this: has Darren told any lies yet? Do we need to correct anything he said?
Not in the last hour.
Mr. Sonny, let me ask you this, sir. You've been around Ponchatoula much longer than Darren or I. When you think about the quote good old days when you and my daddy were coming up, what is it that you really loved about Ponchatoula? Why have you stayed here all this 80-something years? Just give us a flavor, if you don't mind, about Ponchatoula and the good old days and what you've loved about life here.
Well, my parents brought me here when I was about 2 years old, so I don't know anything about living anywhere else. And I think I tried to count up one time, and the most I've ever been out of Ponchatoula in my life was 13 days.
Wow. Where did you go?
We took a trip up to Canada and had a travel trailer and went up there.
What part of Canada did you go to? The mountains or?
We went to Alberta one time, and then we went to the other side, wherever it is.
I took my mom and dad to Alberta last summer. We had a blast. We went up there on that at whatever they call them, the ice fields mountain, highway. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Darren and I have been talking about starting up a business, and he had this great photograph of multiple generations. So y'all start this business in the 90s, probably when you're about my age, in your 40s. That second stage of life you mentioned, middle age. Darren's still in, the grasping at youth as a young dad. You got your beautiful wife, your daughter-in-law, eventually grandkids get involved. What's it like having a family business for the better part of 30 something years? How do you feel about having that legacy you passed down to the next generation or two?
Sometimes it's great. The good thing about it is you get to see your kids pretty regular, because if it wasn't like that, I don't think you'd see them very often.
That's a great point.
But you do get to see them a lot. But sometimes there's quite a bit of friction there that kind of hard to work out,
Well, you telling me old line and young line don't always see eye to eye?
I tell people that Darren runs the outside and Dana runs the inside, and I referee.
I love it. So let's talk about that if you don't mind. So when you got a family business and you got a daughter, inside, I assume means the billing and all that type of stuff. Darren's dealing with the equipment, the actual performing the record services, the driving. I don't know who manages the storage yard and all that. But how is it, Mr. Sonny, when you manage a business, your kids better than anybody, strengths, weaknesses, etc. Darren and I were talking earlier about how you coached him in his Wildcat days and all that. And I'm sure you're just as active in Dana's life. And, but how do you go about that? How do you manage that difference between these are my kids and I love them and I know them, and this is my business? We got a note on a $150,000 piece of equipment out there that's coming due every 30 days, love kids or not. Is there any advice you would give to people that might, like me, if I'm, blessed enough one day or foolish enough one day to go into business with my two little boys, what advice would you give me or anybody else who wanted to follow you down that path?
Don't get into something too deep to get started.
That's a good point.
Try to start as small as you can and let it grow gradually. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew right at the beginning. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with businesses.
Excellent advice. Thank you for sharing that.
That's the main thing, I really believe.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Well, it's like I said, we bought that little truck. We started in '93. It was an '81 model, and I don't know if it was always a wrecker. I think it was, but we had a pretty paint job on it, but it was in rough shape. But we made it work for a year and a half before we, or maybe a little longer before we started, felt like we was working on it more and spending more on repairs than we could be just buying a note.
Right. I once heard Warren Buffett talk about companies he would buy as a cigar butt. He's like, they might have just one puff in them left, but you pick them up at the right price and you get a puff out of it. Sounds like that first truck of yours was not a new Cuban cigar. It was a cigar butt with a puff or two left. Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Sonny, while I got you. I know that, you had other careers in life. Darren, you're unique in that you got a daddy who drove buses, a wife who drove buses. Your mom worked at the school, with Virgil Allen running the front office. What do you remember about the good old days driving that bus, Mr. Sonny, and what kind of stories might you have to tell there? Because it seems like that would be an interesting thing to talk about.
There wasn't very many good old days driving that bus because
hey, the only thing you got lucky there was that Bree and Parker Layrisson walked to school, so you didn't have to drive us. Otherwise, it was probably pretty tough.
Y'all would have been angels. Do you know they got some kids that their parents has never told them, no, you can't do that?
Yeah, I think a lot more in 2024 than they did in 1994.
Yeah, see, he would have just grabbed you or Breer or Louie, and he'd have just grabbed y'all, and that wouldn't have been.
You had the same permission Virgil Allen had when I got to high school, which was to hit us upside the head when we needed it, whether the school rule book allowed for it or not. Well, that's funny. Darren, I asked you, Dad, kind of about the thing with the family business. Now you and Dana have worked so well together all these years, and I'm sure, like any relationship, it's taking a little refereeing here and there. But the bottom line is it's work. Y'all have grown. You become a market leader, and you have this legacy business that goes from, pictures of your kids itty bitty on the back of that little truck to now something bigger. What advice do you think you give to next generation? Let's say one of your grandkid comes up and says, I want to be you one day, Papa. I want to do what you do. What are the first things that come to mind you would share with them?
I don't know, Parker. It is hard to work with family. I don't know if I would advise it, honestly.
Hey, I can relate to that. I've worked with brothers before and currently don't, so I get it.
It can be very challenging. It is good to be together. You see each other. Yeah. The only thing that I will say about it, honestly, is Dana and I don't go on vacation together. I mean, it's just it's just that's not what we do. We see each other every day, so we want to do something else.
Y'all go in different directions. Spring break's coming up. Martin.
Now I will see her if she comes to a Brandon Bennett concert. She's got her little tour. She does some Tula tours. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
She gets a busload of people to go somewhere, and they've been to see the Ark.
That's a cool business. Let's talk about Brandon Bennett, because we kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm not exaggerating when I say Brandon is the best Elvis impersonator in the world. He's one
Elvis tribute artist.
I'm sorry, correct me.
Elvis tribute artist.
Elvis tribute artist. Thank you. So how does that all get started? Because he was a very young man. I mean, he's not yet playing old Elvis, right? But he's a very, very young man when that starts. Some would say kid. Where was the inspiration for that, and how did that all get started, and what was your role in the whole journey?
Well, man, it started when he was in school, and some of his buddies, Lucas Hill, told him, man, my mom was watching one of them old Elvis movies, and you look like him. And I tell you, there's a whole lot of people. There's a whole lot of people that take credit for Brandon's getting started and his career. But I tell you who I'm going to give most of the credit to is Kay Butler. Kay Butler was the one that grabbed Brandon after that talent show out there and said, "You're going to be in theater. We're getting you into this. You're going to sing at this sock hop," because he said, "Oh, I can't do that." And Kay Butler.
So I'm so glad you mentioned her. Today's Thursday. I spent my Wednesday bringing my little boy to and from piano lessons at Swamp Light Theater. And folks who don't know need to know that Miss Kay Butler, who was a legend of Ponchatoula, like that man sitting next to you, Darren, Sonny Bennett, she was kind of the godmother, if you will, of performing arts here in Ponchatoula, both at the school level and at the extracurricular level. And I love to hear, but I didn't know that until this moment when you told me that she played that role in bringing Brandon into that world, because she's done it for so many, whether it's music or art or being on the crew for a production. I mean, a million things. She was just such a wonderful woman. And, her daughter, Barbie Vallow, and the family her grandson was my little boy's piano teacher last semester. So like the Bennett family, that family is touching people through multiple generations. But thank you, Darren, for giving her credit, because she was a wonderful woman and she's widely missed around here. And if anybody's watching who has kiddos or adults for that matter, interested in the arts, go check out Swamp Light. You can learn about Miss Kay. There are tributes there to her. You'll see her picture up there, and her family continues that work. So circling back to your story.
And Barbie is a chip off the old block. Barbie,
yes,
that apple didn't fall far from the tree. Barbie is top notch.
You're right about that. She's a fine woman, and just reminds us all of her mom, because she, like you said, she's a chip off the old block.
Josie and Wyatt. Josie is Brandon's daughter. Wyatt is Taylor's son. They both went through some plays at the Swamp Light, and we all went, and they were great shows. And look, I know you and I have switched back and forth, and you kind of had a criteria, but let's talk about the insurance and the towing a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
I want people to know that they are supposed to have an option if they get in a situation to where their car needs to be towed, whether it be from a fender bender or whatever it may be. They got stopped and their proof of insurance lapsed, and they didn't realize it, or they knew it, and whatever the situation may be, unless you're being arrested for fleeing from the cops, the policeman is supposed to say, "Hey, do you have a record preference?" Because you can pick what record service you want to come and get your car.
You're right. You get to choose. Right.
You can choose who you want. And in July of 2000, 25 years ago, the Public Service Commission took over these police tows that they call us for. Hammond Police, State Police, Ponchatoula Police, Sheriff's Office, anywhere in the state of Louisiana, you are supposed to be able to recommend whatever company you would like. And a really funny story about that, and I want people to understand that the cop is supposed to ask you, but if they don't, you can say, "Hey, I want Bennett's, or I want Big Wheel, or I want Granger's, or whoever you might want." You're supposed to be able to ask them, even if you're getting arrested. If you didn't run from them, they're supposed to give you that choice. Now, with that being said, I got a funny story, and it wasn't funny to the lady at the time, but this happened probably 20 years ago. The lady was working for Tank Powell in town, and she got in a wreck at 4th and Pine. She got in a wreck. The Masonic Lodge is right there.
And it sounds like this was back when Tank Powell was still the state rep, right? Probably.
It may have been, but this lady worked for them, and she had gotten a fender bender there, and I was there with the fire department. I wasn't there in a wrecker. I was there to help that situation with the fire department. And one of the police officers asked her. I was standing there listening, and he said, "Ma'am, we're going to have to call a wrecker for your car. Do you know what wrecker you might want?" Now, stop just for a second and remember that if you get in an accident in your car, some people lose all thought. I mean, some people can't even tell you their name if they get in an accident. It's a traumatic situation, even if it's a fender bender.
Absolutely.
But this policeman looked her. I was standing there. He was standing there. It was Coon Bryant is who the cop was. And he asked
David Coon Bryant, one of the nicest guys in Ponchatoula.
He said, "Ma'am, do you know what record company you want to tow your car?" And she looked at him and she was crying, and she said, "I don't know that name, but they know Elvis." And I looked at Coon and I said, "I know who she wants. Do you know who she wants?"
That's funny. That's the beauty of a small town, is nothing more needed to be said. Coon knew exactly who she was talking about. That's an only in Ponchatoula moment. Thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah, that was a good. I tell that story. I've told it a whole lot of times, but now we got new people, and some people don't get that. They don't even know. They don't even know that Ponchatoula is the green wave. Oh, and with that being said, Tupelo, Mississippi. Tupelo High School is the green wave.
Come on. What a cool connection. So circling back to Elvis and Tupelo and your Elvis, Brandon Bennett, people we jokingly call you the Colonel Parker of the situation, because you had an active role in getting him started and all. So as Miss K brings out his artistic flair, as she did with Taylor, who's a beautiful singer, and now I'm hearing the grandkids too. He hits this trajectory where at a very young age, he starts winning these contests as a tribute artist. He becomes in high demand for high dollar events, casinos, whatever. What's that ride like? And I know that you were there the whole way to protect him from some of the unscrupulous people of the world, but kind of what's your take when you look back to the good old days of Brandon Bennett getting started in the Elvis business as a tribute artist? What do you remember most?
Well, man, Brandon had a gift. He still has it. Brandon can sing. He looks like Elvis.
Yeah,
more than he looks like him and I, but he looks like Elvis. But I'll tell you what,
that's a tough break, man. Because if he could have looked like Mr. Sonny, he'd have it made. But everybody can't be so lucky, Mr. Sonny.
But I tell you what got him the first jobs. Ponchatoula strawberries, man.
Come on, how so? That's cool. I didn't know that.
Look, we loaded the back of that truck up with flats of strawberries and headed to the casinos and asked for the entertainment people. Strawberries.
So you charmed your casino contacts the same way I charm my clients with good old Ponchatoula strawberries. Yep.
Yes,
I love it.
We've had
so you start out in the casino world, and we're not just talking about the local casinos, which of course Brandon played, but you guys go all over the country into Las Vegas, as you mentioned, up into Mississippi. It's really neat to see that kind of success story coming out of a little town like this.
He's been to Russia and Japan.
Wow. He went in 2016. Cool. He went to Russia and Japan. He sure did. And then amazing. In 2009 and 2010, he did a show in Montreal and in Quebec City called The Elvis Story.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, well, it was a big production. That same production came to the Grand in Biloxi back in in about 2000. And there was a Canadian guy that was the star of that show. He was a redheaded guy that really couldn't speak any English, but he did Elvis really good. And the Elvis Story was owned by, the license was owned by a guy in Quebec City. And I forget his name. Brandon knows it. But really neat. Brandon spent 2 summers up there. It was when that show up there ended, myself, Daddy, and Sonny Joyner flew to Burlington, Vermont, rented a car, and went and picked him up. Saw the last show that he did in Montreal, and came home. And I think that was 2010. Okay. And then I guess about 5 years ago, so about 2000. So from 95 to 2000. He was in a show in Chicago called The $1 Million Quartet. It's the longest running Broadway show in Chicago's history. It was Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, and Elvis Presley, and Brandon played the Elvis part in Chicago.
Wow.
So this snow that we got the other day, Brandon said, "Yeah, I didn't miss it."
He's over that. If he did Chicago snow, I had one friend from college get married in February in Chicago, and Louie and Bree and I went up there with our wives, and it was just painful how cold it was. I never want to head back.
He used to ride his bicycle to the show.
No, Ponchatoula boys aren't made for that. Well, you mentioned Mr. Sonny Joyner going with y'all on the road to see those shows, and Mr. Sonny, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to share what that man meant to you and anything you want to mention, because growing up, you guys were like heroes of town to me. I mean, my dad, always revered you guys. Y'all were contemporaries of his, and y'all were all friends. But through the fire department and so much, whether we're talking strawberry stuff or fire department stuff, y'all were the leaders of town of this era. I had his widow, the wonderful Miss Margaret, on the show. We've talked about him before, but what did Mr. Sonny Joyner mean to you? He was such a huge man. I just love for our viewers and listeners to know a little about him, since we won't ever have the opportunity to get him on the show.
Well, he was the closest thing to a brother that I had. I mean, I didn't have a brother, and he didn't have a brother. So we just kind of took each other up when we were about, I'm going to say 10, 12 years old. And it was together ever since. I mean, played football together in the fire department together. Just everything that you could think of. And matter of fact, people used to get us so mixed up that they would get our wives mixed up. I'm not kidding.
They would call your wife Melba. Was that?
Yeah.
Was that?
I'll tell you this story.
Then I'm married to Melba.
I know that really confused things.
Darren was selling firewood when he was in high school one time, and he come in kind of late, and he brought the firewood up to the fella, and the fella wrote him a check. And when he got home, Darren looked at the check, and it was made out to Darren Joyner. And Darren said, "Man, what I'm gonna do?" I said, "Man, go up to the feed store and sign Darren Joyner. They'll cash it." And he did, and they cashed it.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect Ponchatoula story.
I mean, things like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
I'd get his bills, he'd get mine.
That's great. You know, he was a great man. And for newer to town folks, we're talking about the father of our fire chief, Stormy Dean Joyner. You know, also the father of the late Captain Shannon Joyner. I mean, y'all just leave such a rich legacy. Your family and his, which sounds like it's melded into one all these years.
Well, I say it that Shannon and Stormy are the closest thing to brothers I ever had. They were both younger than me, so they looked up to me for a while. Maybe not anymore.
No, I know they did, because I grew up with those guys, and I grew up looking up to them. Stormy was my ride to and from school when I was a kid. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and you know, it's just something special about our little town that you have some of these old families that go back generations, and it's usually you know, an intense connection that forms at one generation, but it gets passed on. You know, in my family, you know, one room over here, my little boy is doing his homework, and he's best friends with Will Richardson's kid. And once upon a time, and still, I was best friends with Will Richardson. We were roommates in college. Before that, Will's Uncle Carl and my dad were best friends, and our grandparents. It's just, you have these kind of relationships, and you can't get that in Chicago, you know, or some giant place. But here in Ponchatoula, it happens pretty naturally. And I got to tell you, Mr. Sonny, from the cheap seats of a little boy who was born in '77 and watched y'all come up, y'all were like heroes to me and Bree and Louie and all of Jean Paul, all of us, you know, coming up. So thank you for everything you've done for this town. Both of you, you too, Darren, you know, through the fire department, through coaching, through all the things you've done. It's not every day that you meet somebody who's raising, you know, butt-kicking football players and hunters on one side of the house and artists who can travel the world on one other side. And sometimes in Brandon, they're all, you know, wrapped up in one person. But it means a lot to me that y'all would share your time. I promised you earlier, Darren, I'd be respectful of your time, get you out of here on time. And I know I got to get to my boys soon to help with dinner. But before we go, what else would y'all like to chat about? Are there any other topics, anything on your mind, on your heart, just anything at all you want to cover?
I'll tell you something that comes to my mind, and I guess it's the generations that's gone by and things has changed so much. But you were talking about the school buses a while ago, and it reminded me of an incident that happened. I guess I was out of school about 20 years. I don't know. But you know, Mr. Butler, you had God, Mr. Butler, then everybody else. I mean, that's the way it was.
People, Mr. Butler was the legendary principal of PHS.
He was the man.
Yeah.
And when you went in that office, you were scared to sit down until he told you to. And I remember an incident that happened. Dana was going to town one day, and right there by the baseball park, there was a big bunch of keys laying in the road, you know, all on a ring.
Right.
And she picked them up and brought them to the police station, and the police didn't want them. They said, no, you just keep them, and if somebody comes and asks for them, we'll tell them where they're at.
About what year was this?
Shoot, I don't know.
I mean, this was maybe the 70s?
Maybe.
Yeah, well, Mr. Butler was still around, you know, that pre-Barker era.
But anyhow, she finally put an ad in the paper. And one day I was sitting there by the phone, and the phone rung. And fellow on the other end said, I understand you found some keys and I've lost some keys. He said, you tell me what kind of keys you found and I'll tell you if they're mine or not. I said, oh, no. I said, that's not the way we're going to do this. I said, you tell me what kind of keys you've lost and I'll tell you if they're them or not. He said, who am I talking to? And I said, this is Sonny Bennett. I said, who am I talking to? He said, Sonny, this is Mr. Butler. They got 2 Volkswagen keys. They got two Ford keys, 2 house keys. I mean, I hopped to attention just like that. And that's just the way it was. But I don't think it's like that anymore.
No, it's funny. My dad tells a story about Mr. Butler calling him in his office. You know, they had gotten caught, some of the kids going on senior skip day. And Dad's, you know, at odds, should he fess up or not? Well, he decides he's just going to spill his guts. So he goes in. He's like, oh, sorry, Mr. Butler. We skipped school. We went to New Orleans. We misbehaved, blah, blah, blah. And he said that for the first time in 4 years at PHS, Mr. Butler cracked a smile. And he said, Layrisson, I called you in here to tell you your class salutatorian. Now I'm not sure you're going to graduate. But I know he had my dad intimidated. He was a heck of a man.
Yeah, but man, you hopped to attention immediately when you was around him.
I bet. I want to share a comment coming in here from a wonderful woman, Mandy Franks Braywick. Hey, Mandy, a friend of the show. She's been a guest on here just like you too. But she says that you are some of her favorite people from Ponchatoula. Great family, great men. And your grandkids, Darren, and her boys are good friends. And I just love that about Ponchatoula. Her brother went to school with Brandon and Louie and all those guys. Yeah. Coach Justin Franks, just a great guy. And so it's so neat to see these families come together. I want to thank both of you for your time. It's been a real pleasure. I've looked forward to this. Darren, you know, you hit it on the head. We could talk here for hours and hours. There's so many stories to tell. We didn't even get to the hunting trips and, you know, it's so much. But I do thank you for coming on here. And your family is one of the most important ones of Ponchatoula, not just because you've been here forever, but because you've made the most of your time here, whether it's coaching little kids or saving people's lives through the fire department or propping up our economy by creating jobs, by creating a business. You just represent the very best of what Ponchatoula has to offer. So I thank you. And as you can see from the background, you've got the strawberry behind you, Mr. Sonny, the Strawberry Festival poster behind you, Darren. Y'all are always supporting this town.
That's the street spot, the train up there that my papa used to be the engineer. I wanted to engineer.
Yeah, that you started the interview talking about. That's so cool. Oh, you know what? We were just Brandon Thompson's coming on here. He says that he and Martha think the world of Mr. Sonny and Darren and their entire family. We were just, of course, you know, talking about his family and Miss Martha's mother's relationship with Mr. Sonny. So it's so neat to see these great families come together. Brandon, thank you for tuning in. For folks that didn't get a chance to see it, Brandon and his lovely wife, Martha, were on the show a few weeks ago. So check out our Facebook page and you can watch that. So to all of our viewers who stuck with us to the end, like Brandon and Mandy, thank you for doing that. To Darren and Mr. Sonny, thank y'all for coming on the show. And Ponchatoula Live will be back next week. Y'all take care.
Thank you, Parker.